Now, if rumours are to be believed, Kingda Ka and indeed Green Lantern are both on the chopping block at Six Flags Great Adventure. In fact, they may already be closing in this closed season and we may not see them next year, which I will be disappointed for because I am getting out there next year and I really wanted to ride these. But in this video, I'm going to share 10 other rides that have already left us that are sadly missed. Now, the first one is over in America, and that was in Universal's Islands of Adventure, and it was Dragon Challenge. Now, this was a set of dueling B&M inverted coasters, and it was quite spectacular to see, and it was very, very clever how they actually built this ride, because as the two trains went up the lift hill, the system actually weighed the trains based on the passengers and adjusted the speed so that it guaranteed that dueling element. Now, there was two kind of loops where they kind of went up and you saw people, so it looked like the feet were going to touch. Very, very impressive to see. Now, this was back in a time before there was the same restrictions on loose items. Obviously, if you've been to Universal, you know everything's in a locker, nothing on the rides. But effectively, this was before that, and there was an incident where something flew off of one passenger on one train and hit a passenger on the other train. And so as a result of that, it then became less, you didn't see the dueling element, it was just the two trains went and you didn't get that spectacular element. Obviously, the ride eventually was removed and is now in place of Hagrid's magical motorbike crazy creature adventure thing. The big long ride, the really, really spectacular one. That's there now. Now, moving closer to home, we have yet another fan favourite, and that was the Wild Mouse at Blackpool. Now, this was quite a unique ride. It was a custom-built wooden Wild Mouse, and it was absolutely bonkers. I went on this many times in my youth, and it genuinely felt like you were going to get flung off that track. It took the Wild Mouse experience to another level. It was also pretty damn painful though. You definitely came off that one with a sore back. Now, in 2017, they did introduce magnetic braking system, which kind of felt like they were increasing the lifespan of the ride, but that turned out not to be true. And in fact, in the closed season from 2017 to 2018, the ride was removed without any notice, and many, many enthusiasts were gutted. And I think the park has learned from that, because the most recent removal, they did have an event to say goodbye. But the Wild Mouse is no longer at Blackpool, and that space to this day is still unoccupied. The next one I have is the Son of Beast at Kings Island. Now, when this opened, this was the tallest and fastest wooden coaster in the world, and it was quite a spectacular ride. It did feature an inverted loop. Now, this was achieved by basically stitching the wooden track to a metal track, did the loop, and then went back onto a wooden track again. Unfortunately, there were a couple of major incidents in 2006 and 2009. Thankfully, neither of them were fatal, but that, along with some issues during the construction, meant the ride wasn't the most reliable, and it lay for a long time standing but not operating, and was finally removed in 2012. Now, coming back to the UK again, there is a ride. This was a strange one. Over in Lightwater Valley, there was an attraction called the Ultimate. Now, it was the longest coaster in Europe. Now, it may have been the longest, it wasn't necessarily the most thrilling, but what is really bizarre about this is that it was constructed by British Rail, which is an interesting choice. I mean, obviously, there's kind of some crossover there, trains on tracks, roller coasters on tracks, but this was definitely their first and only experience of building a roller coaster, and it brought with it some challenges. There was a lot of things that had to get changed. When the ride first opened, it had over-the-shoulder restraints. Now, that is completely bonkers, because there was no inversions on this ride, and it wasn't that kind of exhilarating that it needed it. Latterly, they took those over-the-shoulder restraints off. In fact, there is some footage of Frank Bruno, the boxer, in the opening year, and yeah, he went on it and he didn't go on it again.
I got up there, I was pretty nervous because it was very rocky. Good ride though, get the heart beating fast, and I get the adrenaline, lose a few calories. There was some serious bends and some hills where you had to wait and pose for a little bit, get a suntan or get wet, whatever, and then come down again, Mr. Kipling.
Now, it didn't always make it back into the station, and actually they ended up with a tractor on standby to recover it every time it valleyed. So it definitely had some reliability issues. Now, it sat, again, standing but not operating for a few years, and unfortunately the park did confirm its removal, I think either the start of this year or the end of 2023. But yeah, the Ultimate at Lightwater Valley, it's no longer here. Over in Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, there used to be a ride known as the Big Bad Wolf. Now, this was an aerodynamics ride, a manufacturer that, you know, is no longer with us. The attraction was quite interesting because it was a suspended coaster, but the trains were kind of like baskets that sort of swung as it went around the track. As I say, it is an aerodynamics classic, so when Arrow folded, it became more and more difficult to get parts and maintain this ride, and ultimately the park did get rid of it. Now they have teased that in 2025 they're bringing back the Big Bad Wolf's Revenge. Obviously not an aerodynamics ride, in fact I think it's a B&M, but it is coming back as a homage to that original ride next year. Now over in Japan there was a rather impressive attraction, initially known as Do-Dodonpa, and then it got modified and became Do-Dodonpa. But effectively this was the world's fastest launching coaster. It got up to 107 miles an hour in 1.8 seconds. Now, the original version featured a top hat. Used to shoot you out straight over this top hat and then continue with the rest of the layout. Now in 2017 they modified the ride. This is when it became Do-Dodonpa. They took away that top hat, they put in an inverted loop instead, and they actually sped the thing up. It ended up at 112 miles an hour in 1.56 seconds. Now there's quite a lot of reports from guests of broken bones due to the force of this, and the ride has now been completely removed. Now back over in the UK, again we have an attraction that was in Camelot theme park, a park itself that no longer exists, and that was the Knightmare. Now this came from Japan originally. It was known as BMR-X, and it was quite an impressive ride. Now when it was over in Japan, it had this beautiful mountain facade. When it came to the UK, that didn't come with it. We just got the coaster itself, but it pulled some impressive Gs, up to 5G, which is quite a lot for any modern coaster. Now, unfortunately, when the park closed in 2012, the ride sat standing but not operating. They struggled to find a buyer for this, and in 2023, the ride was demolished and turned into scrap metal. Now moving over to Australia, they had an attraction known as Tower of Terror and latterly Tower of Terror 2. Now this was a shuttle coaster. It was quite impressive because it used to shoot you straight out of a little tunnel, straight up into a sort of vertical spike, and then back into the station. Now when it shut and became Tower of Terror 2, it was switched so that you shot out of the tunnel backwards, and it was a longer tunnel, and it went faster. But again, this attraction is no longer with us. Now again, heading back over to the US, there was Gwazi. Now this was a rather impressive wooden dueling coaster. And it used to have, obviously, the two sides. One was the lion, one was the tiger. And it was quite impressive because they used to, release the two trains in parallel and they would race around this track. Now latterly, that kind of dueling element disappeared. I don't know if it was operational or whatever, but basically you rarely ever saw the two trains leave at the same time, and then eventually one side was almost decommissioned and never ever happened, and it went down to just one side. And then of course, as we now know, it was completely modernised by RMC, and we have now got Iron Gwazi, which is a spectacular ride. But the original wooden Gwazi ain't there no more. Now the last one I have on this list is Top Thrill Dragster. Now this was an Intamin launch coaster, and a bit like Kingda Ka, Intamin launch coasters, the hydraulic launch at least, now this was a very, very punchy launch, but it was also quite problematic, and it had regular downtime. The hydraulic launch was quite a nightmare to keep operational. Now the park took the decision to modernise this one, as we all kind of now know, and they went with Top Thrill 2. Now they got in a different manufacturer, they got Zamperla in to reimagine this one, and moved it from hydraulic launch to LSM. The problem with LSM is you cannot quite get to that speed as quickly, and that is why it's the swing launch, so it does a couple of passes before it gets up to the speed to get over that top hat. Now, as we all know, Top Thrill 2 has not quite gone to plan, and at the time of recording, it is still not in operation. It operated for around about a week and has been shut for the rest of the season. We don't know quite why. There's been a lot of stuff about wheel carriers and different trains and all that kind of stuff, and they are saying it will be back in 2025. And I think this is potentially why Kingda Ka is on the chopping block, because it is also that hydraulic launch, which is problematic. And I guess given that Top Thrill 2 did not go to plan, maybe that was the original expectation for Six Flags Great Adventure, but looking at that, they're probably now thinking, nope, we're not going to reimagine this one, it is just time to go. As I said at the start of this, I am out there next year, and I really wanted to get on this because it is currently the tallest coaster in the world, although Falcon's Flight is now complete, it is not operational yet. So I was hoping to experience this firsthand, and it is still possible. The park has not confirmed its closure, but I think it is very, very highly likely that it is going. So anyway, if you remember any of these coasters in this video, please let me know. And if there's any others that you think of that I've not put on this list, because there are many, many coasters that are no longer with us, please let me know down below. If you enjoyed this one, hit that like button and do subscribe. I've been Chris, you have been watching Coaster Dad, and I shall see you in the next one. Adios.